It's what should happen when political leaders realize that something they said during the campaign was misunderstood or created unnecessary tension?
Yeah. And that's the thing about competitive politics, is that people say things
Right.
in the heat of the moment. We've watched campaigns over the last 3 months prior to the election on what they call it, the stomp, right? Being on the stage, in the rallies. There's
Right.
a lot that's said. Some of it could aggravate, right? The counterparts. And that naturally does create a degree of tension. But the most important thing that we must do as a society is really recognize that it's ultimately a competition of ideas, right? There's different reasons why people support a candidate and so on. And you've heard a lot of things said in the midst of a campaign where, the stakes are seen to be so high that people are willing to do drastic things in order to succeed, right? Which is obviously a very difficult thing to stomach. The reality is, I think it's also important that leaders exercise maturity, regardless on which side of the spectrum you're on, whether you succeed or you don't, especially at the time when the election is over. Because citizens as a whole have to move on, whether they won or whether they lost. Because the worst thing we can have is allowing whatever was said before carry through and become a huge source of tension in the country. All right, and I need to make an admission. I've been guilty myself of, in the heat of the exchanges online, I got caught up in a bit of banter here and there, and there's some things that I can say now were quite regrettable, and I will mention this, and I think it's important, Ruth. You may not know this, and there's a lot of things I'm not permitted to talk about because of the context of certain things that transpired, but I'll draw you to a moment that took place, I think it was the day right after the election.
Right.
There was, of course, talk of a lot of things that transpired. And, I remember there was an allegation that a certain gentleman, I believe is the husband to to Honorable Tasila, right? It was said that he had been hurt or something like that.
Right.
But then moments later, I saw a clip with him in it. So, of course, that created a lot of jokes, like, people are pretending that they're unwell.
Yeah, true.
So now, in the midst of that, there was another story that another gentleman was hurt.
Okay.
And they said he was in hospital, right? So again, jokingly answered, he's not... He's just looking for medicine for, blood pressure. Something I wrote. Little did I know. In fact, I found out, like the rest of the country, a few days later, that the gentleman who was being referred to actually passed away.
Oh, no.
And I immediately regretted what I said. And of course, government is structured in a certain way. Where you're in silos, right? You're on a need-to-know basis. Some things are way higher than my pay grade, whether it be, there's what the security wings do, which we don't know about because they're the security wings, and there's secrecy around the operations in the interest of national security.
Right.
So it's possible for me not to know, and this is one of those circumstances where I did not know. So one of the things, talking about mistakes and healing, I want to be able to, genuinely, sincerely, from the heart, extend condolences to the family of the gentleman, or at least the people who had passed away during the course of, this past election, for whatever reason. Not only extend condolences, but for the comment I made with regards to in the context of not knowing the condition of the gentleman, because of course, like I mentioned, we're doubtful what was happening. I would like to really apologize to them for that, because the reality is, there's a lot can be said without knowing, and that's why, for me personally, it's important to apologize. And at the same time, I hope that everyone, as a country, regardless of, I mentioned win, lose. On the winning side, you don't gloat to a point that you make your neighbor feel so bad about the outcome of the election that they can't even exercise their rights as a citizen anymore.
Right.
At the same time, the same group that lost, they should not feel that they will not be treated fairly. This is why it was important for me, immediately the announcement came, we had a video ready to convey our appreciation for the election, to appreciate those who supported our candidate, but at the same time recognize that we need to embrace those who actually lost, because they're Zambians, right? 1.8 million people is a lot of people, regardless of the fact that we got way more votes, but that's a lot of people. Right. And they have family, they have people who depend on them, and they had hopes in their own way that their candidate would deliver something that would benefit them. But they should know that we as a government, we want to, as part of the healing, as part of, being Zambian is a unique and amazing thing. It's that we are peaceful, we're stable, all these things. We're polite, we're friendly, we're embracing. And that is often tested at times like this. And in the midst of this test, I think it's time for us to step up and show love, even in the midst of difficulty. Because I can tell you, even right now, there's a lot of insults flying around, a lot of negative talk. But we owe it to ourselves, as Christians especially, to have a higher degree of magnanimity. Because this is what the president is like, in terms of him being all-embracing and really wanting us to be united as a country. So I hope that, answers your question. I think to wrap it up, I think one is that we must acknowledge when we're wrong, as I've done today. Of course, beyond acknowledging, embrace people, be understanding, listen to understand, not to defend yourself, have empathy and feeling for the condition of other people. And I think that is part of the process in us moving away from the tension of all the negative exchanges to now a platform of